a maple leaf block is tricky? I'll show you the simple, beginner-friendly way to make it fast and flawless in today's tutorial, how to make a maple leaf quilt block the easy way. Today we're working on block number 7 in the Around the Block quilt series. We're going to be making a maple leaf quilt block, as I mentioned in the opener. What you're going to need for this video: the maple leaf quilt block is block number 7 in our series, the Around the Block quilt series, where we're looking at various beginner type blocks that are very easy for new quilters to make. For this particular block, it's going to measure 12 inches squared, and we're going to need the following pieces of material to create this. So the maple leaf quilt block is essentially 4 half square triangles and a block that is a strip on a diagonal. And those are the most difficult parts of this block. Otherwise, it's just solid material. In order to make the half square triangles today, we're going to use the 4 at a time method. So to achieve 4 half square triangles that are going to measure 4.5 inches squared, you're going to need 2 pieces of material that measure 7.5 inches. So you see here we have our material that we're using for our actual leaf, this green material here, and then we have this speckled background piece that we're using, or speckled piece that we're using for our background. So we're going to use this material to make our 4.5 inches squared half square triangles. We're also going to need a background piece that measures 4.5 inches squared. And then for the actual leaf itself, we're going to need 3 pieces that measure 4.5 inches square. For the leaf or the stem of the leaf, we're going to need another piece that measures 4.5 inches squared. So I'm using this kind of brownish material here to be the stem. And then in order to create the stem, you're going to need 2 additional pieces of background material. And so you're going to need 2 pieces of background material that measure 4 inches square. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by making the stem. And so to do that, we're going to employ the stitch and flip method. So what you're going to do is take your material that you're using as the stem, and you're going to lay it right side up. And then you're going to take one of the pieces of the background material, and you want to draw a diagonal corner to corner. So hopefully you can see this purple line here, corner to corner. So we're going to just line this up with one of the corners of our stem material. And then we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew directly on this purple line here. So directly from corner to corner, diagonally across the small background piece of material. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so I've lined up the 2 pieces of material, and you're just going to want to line it up in one of the corners, and then we're going to sew directly along this line here. Okay, so once we have that sewn on, you're going to want to just flip it over just to get a good visual for how that's going to look. Do a bit of a finger press. And we're going to need to trim off the material on the back. So line up your ruler 1/4 of an inch away from the line that you've drawn on. And then we're going to cut. So let me try to get a little bit closer so you can see what that looks like. So we're lining up the 1/4 of an inch mark on our ruler with the line that we've drawn onto the background material. And then we're going to just Do a nice easy cut there. And then we're going to flip the material back over. And then we'll want to iron this flat. But I'm going to wait to iron it after I have both pieces sewn on. So, and then in the opposite corner, you'll just line up your second background piece of material that has the line drawn on diagonally. And then we're going to, again, just sew directly onto that line. And then we'll come back and do the flip and stitch method again to trim that off. Okay. So again, we're going to line our ruler up the 1/4 inch mark along the drawn on line, and then we're going to just cut. And then we'll flip this material over, and you can see we have our stem of our leaf here. Now again, I'm going to just iron this flat, and then we'll keep moving forward. Okay. So if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I prefer to iron my seams open. You, of course, can do whatever your favorite method is, ironing to one side or pressing those seams open. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to move forward and make the half square triangles. And so to do that, we're going to line up our 2 pieces of material that are 7.5 inches square. We're going to line them up and line up the corners as best as you can. With the 4 at a time method of making your half square triangles, what we're going to do is line the materials up right sides facing each other. And then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch around the entire square. So we're going to just very simply take a 1/4 inch seam around each of the sides of the square. And then ultimately we will cut on the diagonal to end up with 4 half square triangles. If you're interested in a cheat sheet that will tell you how to do this method as well as the 8 at a time method, there is a link in the description of this video to a free handout that I have that gives you the pieces or the size of the material that you need to start with in order to end up with the half square triangle that you need for your particular design. It is a free resource, so I encourage you to download it. So let me just very quickly change the flips on my machine here. Okay, so now we want to just, again, sew 1/4 inch around each end of the square. Once you have the 1/4 inch seam made on all 4 sides of your square, what you're going to want to do is to just simply make 2 cuts, corner to corner, and then we're going to end up with our 4 half square triangles that we will trim to 4.5 inches squared. It's ideal if you have a mat that can rotate. However, that's not necessary at all. It's just a nice to have to make sure you're not moving your material too much. Okay, open. This method is really quick and easy because you're doing all 4 half square triangles at one time. Okay, so the half square triangles are pressed The seams are pressed open. Again, this is a step where if you so desire, you can press your seams to one side or another. And so now we're going to just trim each of these half square triangles to 4.5 inches square. I'm using my Creative Grids ruler that measures at 4.5 inches square, so that helps to make the trimming process a bit faster for me. But again, this is a tool that's not necessary. You can use any ruler to trim your half square triangles. And so I will demonstrate that with just a regular, this is a regular 5-inch square ruler. So to use this type of ruler that's not the exact size that you want your square to be, you just want to line up the 45-degree line along the diagonal of your half square triangle, and then you want to trim off just a sliver so that you have 2 straight edges. And then you want to flip your block so that you're now lining your ruler up with the straight edges. And then you want to just slide your ruler down to the 4.5 inch mark. Okay, and then you'll trim. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5, 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Just doing a quick double check before I cut. Okay, so that's the 4.5 inch half square triangle that we measured just using a standard ruler. Now I'm going to go back to my 4.5 inch Creative Grids ruler again because it's the exact size and it helps to make this process a bit faster. So next we're going to lay out the quilt block, and at this point it really just becomes a 9 patch. So we're going to lay out the top corner here, and then we will add our half square triangles, which are the leaves of the maple leaf. Okay, you can see it's starting to take shape here. Okay, so from this point on, we're just going to attach each of the squares using a 1/4 inch seam, and we will end up with a maple leaf quilt block. Okay, for the next step, I'm going to press my seams open so that I can flatten them out here. Again, in this step, you can press yours open or to the side. Okay, so I have each of the 3 rows completed. I'm now going to attach the rows. I'm going to pin them together. So I'm going to just line up the seams here and stick a pin in. This will help to ensure that I have a better chance of having nice points. so that the fabric doesn't move around too much as it's being fed through the sewing machine. Okay, so the final step is I'm going to press these seams open and then we'll be done with this quilt block. So this is our completed quilt block. This is the maple leaf quilt block. This is number 7 in the series, the Around the Block quilt block series, where we've been working on some standard blocks that are good for new quilters to know. So I'm going to leave a link up in one of these corners. I don't know which one it is, but if you didn't already see the previous video, I'll leave a link to the playlist so that you can go back and see the videos that you may have missed. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. Again, there is a link in the show notes for a free resource that will show you how to make half square triangles, 2 at a time, 4 at a time, 8 at a time. And also included in that same handout is a cheat sheet on how to make flying geese blocks. So a very useful tool to download if you haven't already done so. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Please like the video, subscribe, and comment, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Happy quilting.